case is I'm going to just sort of talk about really what we're going to go through today. So you're being first-time buyers, and this is obviously a brand new process for you. And there's lots of misconceptions with buying a property when you're going through the process. A lot of people, I always find communication is absolutely paramount when you're buying, because when there's no communication, people tend to think that the worst things are happening. So they'll be blaming, oh, maybe the seller doesn't want to sell because they haven't returned these forms or those forms and things like that. And it's really funny because at the moment we're going through the process of selling a property for my mother-in-law, and we got all the forms over yesterday, and I'm so busy with work. And I said to my wife, can you, do you mind filling them out? And she's like, oh my God, it's so overwhelming. And I said, all right, fine, then I'll do it. I had to fit it in. And you don't realize, even when you've sold before, that it may be years since you've sold. There's so much paperwork for you to do in order to start things going. And it's a bit easier for you as the buyers, but the sellers have a big obligation. So one of the things that I'll be doing is my role is to, I suppose, speak to the seller, make sure that he is filling out the forms. He's filled out the forms, and he's done. He hasn't been very well, actually. He went away and he came back, and he hasn't been that well. But I'll be speaking to him on Monday to make sure that he's filling out the forms, and also that he hasn't got any issues with filling them out. All the the stuff that has to go back to the solicitor. But you as buyers, the obligations that you have are really in at the beginning in two parts. So number one is the legal side of things, and number two is the financial.
Yeah.
And as I talk through this, please feel free to stop me and ask as many questions, because I'll just go through it. But they both run together in tandem. And the idea is that you are going to be investing some money into this. And sometimes you feel like, well, I don't know what, I don't want to put maybe some money in at the beginning just in case the seller's not completely serious. But that's where I come in to assure you that I know that he is very, very serious. So let's look at these two parts. The first part being the financial side of it. So the first thing that you would be needing to do now that your offer has been accepted, and I know that you've done this anyways, is that you speak to your mortgage broker, and they go through the application form process with you, and they gather all the information, and then they submit the mortgage application. Once the application's been submitted to your lender, the lender will then instruct a surveyor. So the surveyor isn't part of the lender, it's an independent surveyor that they instruct, and it's generally someone that lives in Watford, a surveyor that operates this area. So even if your lender's up in Yorkshire, excuse me, I'm just clearing something off the screen there, that's it. They will, it'll be a local surveyor that will know the area, they know the sort of property you're buying, they'll know what everything's sold for. And the purpose of that is to make sure that you're not overpaying on your property. So the survey that they will undertake is a valuation survey, and it's only a valuation. So they're not going to be looking at anything else except for walking into the property, maybe taking 5 to 10 minutes, that's all, having a look around of a flat, because your flat's a flat in a block, it's quite a modern build. You can see what it is. They look in all the rooms. They look at the ceilings to just make sure that it's in a reasonable enough condition that the value of it will be fine. And then they'll then report back to the lender and say, yes, it's worth the money that they're paying for it. And then generally about a week after that survey, you'll get your formal mortgage offer. Okay. So that part of that process, have you submitted your application yet with your
yes
broker? You have. Okay, fine. So really I should be hearing, I would imagine I'll hear next week from the surveyor.
Okay.
Oh no, they have. It's booked in. The survey's actually booked in.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you when it's booked in for. Let me quickly look at my diary. It's next week. Yeah, it's on Wednesday.
Oh,
Okay.
nice one.
Nice.
All right, yeah, Wednesday morning. So, and in fact, I think Steve's still, not sure if Steve's going to be there or not, but I'm going to be meeting them and letting them in anyway. Okay, so that means that a week after next Wednesday,
Mhm.
you should really get your mortgage offer. Okay, so that will be that's in place. So at the same time that's going on, it's the legals. So the legal side of the process really has to start off. Well, the only thing that you do at the beginning is you instruct your solicitor, which you've done.
Yes.
And you supply them with your ID and verification and everything. But they can't do anything until they receive the draft contracts. So the draft contracts come from your seller solicitor.
Okay.
But they come from the seller initially. So the seller fills out these 3 big forms. Really what they are is, the first one talks about the property, the costs involved of the property, so the management company details and information.
Okay.
And the second one is all about the utilities. So it's just, who's the suppliers of the gas, electricity, and any issues where it may have with neighbours or boundaries, which you won't get any boundary issues because it's a block of flats, but there's things like that. And the third one is fixtures and fittings. So it's anything that they are including within the sale. Legally, they can't leave you without the basics. So what you've seen, he's entitled to take all of his furniture, but he has to still leave you with light bulbs and light fittings and plug sockets and door handles and door furniture and toilets and radiators and things like that. So, so that forms part of the draft contracts. So once he's filled them in with his solicitor can then applies to the local authority, gets the deeds for the property, we'll have a copy of the lease. They'll apply for the lease of the property. And once they've got that, they send that to your solicitor. So that is determined by the seller, the speed of that to begin with.
Yeah.
And I always say, give the seller, look, it can be done in an hour or 2 hours, but I always give them a few days to do that. Once your solicitor is in receipt of the draft contract pack, at that point, they will do 2 things. The first thing they'll do is they can then apply for searches. So that would mean you'll need to then pay them some money, which you may have done already, the solicitor, for searches. The 3 searches are local authority, environmental, and utilities. So in reverse order, utilities really just means what you can get or what you can't get there. So for example, if it's in a bad area where you can't get I don't know, EE
Coverage,
coverage, then that would come up. If for example, it will come up that there's no gas in the building. Okay, so it's things like that will come up. Okay. Environmental covers a few things. It covers physical environmental. So in other words, is the ground good ground or has it been spoiled or ruined? The chances of that are minimal because they wouldn't have built a block of flats on contaminated land, but there are blocks of flats that do get built on contaminated land. So they'll go through things like that with you. The environment can also be things like antisocial behavior, and complaints. So if there's ever been any complaints made, then you'll get to know about it there. And the local authority search is about any proposed new developments.
Okay.
Anything that can spoil what you're buying.
Okay.
Spoil, yeah. Okay. So that's really that. they'll come back. They're normally going to come back with nothing on them. They very rarely come back with anything that's surprising. So that's the searches. Your solicitor will also, they call it raise inquiries. So they're going to have all this information and they're going to read through it, and they may want clarification on a few other points, which they will do. They'll want clarification on things like service charges, if there's any plans to increase service charges, if there's any plans to increase the ground rent. And that will also go, questions will have to be answered by the management company, so they can't be answered by your seller nor the seller's solicitor. So these are the things that take a bit of time, because now you're relying upon somebody else to answer the question that doesn't have really any incentive to do so, but they will, and that's, I always think that's a good sort of indication of how good the management company is. By the way, when you sell a property, so your seller will have to pay for that information from the management company that's being supplied. And one of the things they do is they a really important document, which you wouldn't be able to buy the property without your solicitor going through this, is called a management pack. And they're normally about £300, which the seller would be buying. And in there, it will have all of the, it's almost like, I always call it like an aeroplane sort of like black box. It will have all the history of the block, all the payments that have been made, the things like the buildings insurance, who it's with, and it just, just really, it's everything about the block and the flat itself. Any sort of maintenance that's had to be carried out, things like that. Now, once your solicitor raises those inquiries, they'll get answered by the seller's solicitor. And these are the things that I'll be doing. So throughout this entire process, all of these points, they're like key stages for me. So I'll be on the phone, or I'll be sending emails saying, you know, have you received the inquiries? Have you, to the seller's solicitor, are you now answering them? When do you expect the answers to come back by? Who do you have to contact for the answers? Can I help? So if the management if they say, well, there's loads of answers that the management company still haven't come back to, I won't be able to contact the management company, but the seller will. So I'll be on to the seller saying, you know, speed this up, whatever you've got to do. So these are the things that happen. So you've now got your mortgage offer. The seller's solicitor has answered all of the questions for your solicitor and are happy, and your solicitor's happy with that. And they're not going to raise any more questions. This is the good bit. At that part, they're satisfied. So what your solicitor will then do is they'll send you a report, and the report will be everything that I've just said. It will be what they've done, what questions they've asked, what answers they've got, and that they're satisfied with it all. So what they're saying to you is they're presenting you and they're saying, this property is good. As far as I'm concerned, this property is great for you to buy. No issues at all. With that report, there'll be the contracts, the actual, so there won't be the draft contract anymore. It will actually be the contract, which you'll then sign. That goes back to your solicitor, and we set an exchange date. Okay, so your seller is buying on. So exactly the same things will be happening, and we need to then coordinate those exchange dates. So you could be ready, but they may be a little bit behind you, or he's buying a freehold house. So actually, it'll be much quicker. So generally speaking, of buying a freehold house is between 3 to 4 weeks quicker than buying a flat, because there's no management company, there's no lease, so it's much more straightforward. And therefore, we then set a date to exchange contracts. Now, when you exchange contracts, your liability here is that you need to then have your deposit available, 10% deposit of the purchase price, which you then transfer to your solicitor.
Okay.
All right. You just, obviously, you'll speak to your bank about it. Because some banks don't like you transferring large sums of money in one go. and others are okay with it. So that's it. So the day of exchange actually comes, you've transferred the money, and the solicitors then exchange the contracts. Once the contracts have been exchanged, that's when you've bought it. And I always relate this to a car, buying a car. As you go and see a car that you like, you don't want to give them any money, just in case you never see them or the car again. So what you do is you get someone that's a mechanic to check it out, who's, that's the solicitor or the surveyor. And by the way, you could get your own survey done as well on this property. I'll talk to you about that in a moment. And yeah, you're happy, so you give them a deposit, and that's it, basically. Give them the deposit, and then you get the rest of the money sorted out, the finance on the car or something. So what's happened now is contracts are exchanged, and at that point you set a completion date, which is completion date means it's all completed. It means that's the day that your lender transfers the funds all to the solicitor, who then pays it to the other side solicitor, and that's the day that it's yours, and you collect the keys, and it's your property at that point. Okay, let me just talk about survey, because it's your choice, and your solicitor will advise you to do this, but it is your choice, and I'm going to talk through the logic of this and give you my opinion.
Okay.
So you can instruct your own independent survey on the property. But I always say, look at the logic of this. Okay, so as an estate agent, I'm obliged to always say you should always have a survey done on every property, because you should. However, there's a difference to what you're buying. You're buying a flat in quite a modern block, which you can see with your own eyes. Okay, within there, you're not buying a house where you've got to be responsible for the walls, the roof, everything else, and maybe it's not in really modern condition. You are still responsible, okay, for the for the workings of within the flat itself, but it doesn't have a gas boiler because it's electric, so you're not going to have to worry about the boiler. The only thing that I suppose it could have would be things like the windows are fairly new. Everything's fairly new in it. You could go for a very minimal home buyers survey on it, which would just, again, it would just go in there and just check that it's in good enough condition. I mean, it's all internal stud walls, the plaster's in good shape, the ceilings are in good shape. You can see it yourself. I think the only thing that you would probably question would be, how good is the bathroom? Well, the bathroom looks good, maybe. So if you get a leak from a tap, it's something that you'd sort out in any case. You weigh up whether it's worth spending, another hundreds and hundreds of pounds to get it done, or if you're happy with it yourself. But I sometimes advise you, buying the sort of property that you're buying, that if you know a good builder, just bring them round and let them have a look at it and just give them their thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah, just something like that, just to get another pair of eyes on it. But your solicitor will advise you that you get a survey, I'm sure. And as an agent, I am advising you to always do that, but just be mindful, of what you're buying compared to what's being surveyed.
But this one at the time that the contract is already done, right?
Sorry?
So this survey
is sorry,
when everything's completed?
No, I missed it out. You could do it now. You could instruct it now. I would generally instruct it after you've got your mortgage offer in your particular case. It's something that you want to do before before you sign contracts. You definitely want to do it then, so it's but you and you can get a private surveyor. I can recommend you to a private surveyor, get some quotes and see what they think, tell them what you're buying and see what they recommend. It would be good to have an independent conversation with somebody about it. That's what I'm going to say. As I said, any questions on it, on anything?
The $1 million question.
Yeah.
When are we gonna move in?
I wish I knew that answer. If he wasn't buying on, I could give you a rough idea and tell you that buying a leasehold flat from the point of having your offer accepted to the day that you move in, you've got to allow 10 to 12 weeks. Okay. So what are we now? We're now, okay, so we got August, September. We agreed it probably 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I would say mid-October, but if he ends up, yeah, I mean, I don't, as long as he ends up getting something, I'm going to speak to him actually early next week just to see what he's looking at, because he went away on holiday, came back and hasn't been too well. And I got delayed, couldn't get a flight back. It all, with all the delays and everything that was happening, couldn't get a flight back, and then wasn't too well. But I'll find out how his property searching is actually going. So that's that. Yeah, but so that's really what I could say. If it was, yeah, it should take about 2.5 to 3 months. The things that delay you are searches coming back, which haven't been an issue up until now. But I'm hearing it sporadically. I'm still not having an issue with Watford Council. Hertsmere Council, I'm having an issue with that search seems to be taking long. And when I say long, it's something that can hold up the transaction. So, you know, it could be two months to get a search back, but generally they've been 3 to 4 weeks. And Watford, but that won't affect you. So yes, so it's just about as quick as, and the things you have no control over are, the third party things like the management company, things like that. But generally speaking, that, you know, this is a good management company that they're with, because you're buying something that they've chosen, the management company themselves, as within the development. In fact, he said, Gisela said that there's a link, because that was it. One of the directors of the management company just sold. It was the flat that was almost next door to the one that you're buying. And she provided a link to the entire management pack, to everything. And he actually said to me, because she provided that link, the sale flew through in no time at all. So he's got that link as well. So he'll be giving that link to his solicitor, to your solicitor. So that, so that would hopefully, So actually, it could be quicker.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Now he has a session. He has to.
Yeah, no problem.
I have to go to work.
Good.
I really appreciate your effort, and I hope to see you.
Yeah, okay, Nadia, have a great time at work, all right? And I'll speak to you all next week. I'll get an update, all right?
All right then.
I have one question, if you don't mind.
Take care.
Go on, go ahead.
How often should we hear from the solicitor? Should we pester them for information? Or
I love that. I love the pester word. Oh God. Right. What solicitors have lots of cases, okay? And you know, 50, something like that, 50, 60 cases. It's a huge amount, and they just have them all running at the same time. So it's a bit of juggling. So I would say the first thing that I've got to do is I've got to pester. So I need to actually see that that where we are right now. So I need to find out that all the forms are back with the seller's solicitor. There's no point pestering your solicitor if they're not back yet.
Yeah, okay.
Once they're there, I'll then be contacting the seller's solicitor if they're not with your solicitor. So really, if you think about it, if he sent those forms back, which I believe he has done, then 1 day turnaround, 2 day turnaround, they should be with your solicitor, because everything gets emailed over. So really, they should be with your solicitor. What I'll do, because we're literally just started this, I mean, it's right at the very beginning of the process. What I'll do is I tend to leave them alone on a Monday, but Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays are my main sales progression days. because yeah, never a Friday, because Fridays tends to be the big days that solicitors do their exchanges. And anything that's not exchanged on a Friday, because sometimes they plan to exchange contracts on deals on a Friday, and there's a snag. So then it goes on the Monday, which is why I tend to leave them alone on a Monday as well. But for those 3 days, so I'll find out on Tuesday exactly where the draft contracts are. And if they're with your solicitor, then that's great. Because if they're with your solicitor, it means they should apply for the searches straight away. Okay.
All right.
But I'll let you know what's going on with your survey. Well, you'll hear about it. You'll hear about the survey anyway. But your broker should really have told you that the survey was happening next week, because they would know.
Okay.
All right. So you should know that.
Yeah. Our broker was also off
Oh, fine. There you go. So that's
1 or 2 days last week. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it then. So what I'm going to ask you to do, so look, really what you could do, we're on WhatsApp with each other, I think, aren't we? Yeah, okay. So just literally with updates, with just little mini updates, I'll WhatsApp you, you WhatsApp me, and don't feel bad. Just, I think rather than pestering the solicitor at first, if you haven't heard anything, just WhatsApp me, and then I'll say, contact your solicitor. What I'll tend to do as well is any emails that I send to your solicitor where I'm starting to feel that it's dragging on a little bit, or key points haven't been reached yet, I will copy you in.
Okay. Nice.
So because at the end of the day, you're their client.
Yes.
So that's, you know, so therefore you should be aware of what's happening all the time. Then you should get an idea of it. Yeah. And so that's it. But that's good that you're saying that, because a lot of the time I do rely upon you as well to contact your solicitor. Because maybe solicitors in the pecking order of their priority, and I get this, totally understand it. It goes, you know, to the first thing they actually are doing is they'll want to get on with their work. So that's and their communication will be with the other side solicitor as their priority. Secondly is you, because you're their client, and they'll you know, and estate agents, we're lucky, which is why I love recommending my solicitors, because I recommend my solicitors are all about communication. That's all it's about for me, because if they can't communicate, I don't know where we are, and therefore I don't know when I'm getting paid, and that's the truth of it. But therefore you don't know when you're going to be moving in. So you know, so as far as I'm concerned, I always recommend that people use one of my recommended solicitors, so that I know where we actually are, and I can plan my life as well as everybody else. You know, you planning your life of moving in and things like that. Okay. All right. Okay.
Lovely. All right. Thanks very much.
Welcome. Have a lovely weekend.
Thanks very much for this. It's absolutely useful and helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, this is the beginning of the journey, and I'll speak to you. I'll speak to you early next week. All right.
All right. Okay. Thanks very much. Have a good weekend.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.